Okay, so today we're going to dive into how to get your husband to change and be the man that you want him to be. I'm sure that many of you have said, if only my husband would do this, then I'll show up as the wife that I know I can be, right? And we're sometimes waiting on them. And it happens a lot in our Rise Up Queens events. And so today I have a good friend here, Molly Rhodes, and she is a part and a leader and coach in our Rise Up Queens community. And I believe we had this similar conversation. So her husband went through the Rise Up Kings event, which Skylar, my husband, runs, and you guys had a good marriage. I don't know, maybe you want to tell your journey as you guys went through that.
Absolutely. So yeah, I would say that our marriage was probably at a good 8. I mean, we were just kind of coasting. And I look back and I consider, I think that we were playing it safe within our marriage. I think that we were not thinking about how we could make it, I guess taking it from an 8 to a 10. But really I look back and I think, man, we were really missing it in the intimacy department, not just physical, but also the emotional connection and vulnerability connection. And so we were just kind of staying rote with just normal marriage, parenting. And so when Thomas went through the Rise Up Kings seminar, he was deeply transformed. And I just thought, well, I guess I'll just join him and in this endeavor, and I'll go to the Rise Up Queens event. I don't really need it because I'm good.
Yeah.
But I'll do this for him.
Yeah, so don't turn this off. If you think you're good, don't turn this off yet. This is about to get good.
Yes. So I went to the Rise Up Queens event and I was absolutely blown away. I was so humbled to realize that the very thing that I was saying was, I will show up when he does this, or I will be a good wife if he does that. It was all very conditional. It was a transactional relationship. And so I was waiting on him to be the one to show up. But what I realized in the Rise Up Queens event is that I have a choice in how I want to show up. And not only will that impact him, but more than anything, it's how do I want to show up for myself? Who is the wife that I deeply desire to be, regardless of where he is and regardless of what I'm getting out of the relationship.
And that speaks to so much. I don't know, because so often they truly probably are an 8, right? And they're playing it safe. And what it would take to get from an 8 to a 10, because there's been moments in our relationship where we feel like we've been a 9 or a 10, or we're at our max, and there's another level, right? I feel like we rated our sex life at one point, and we were an 8. But that was literally based on us and our intimacy. It was based on us going on date nights, and we had sex regularly, but the depth of the connection, I didn't know what I didn't know. Right. I feel like that's what we discover at some of the events is like, you didn't even know that this is what was possible, but then you look back and you're like, oh my gosh, I was missing out on so much. Like there's so much more available. So if you have the thought that, oh, well, my husband needs to change first, I just want to challenge that lie, or I'll be happy when my husband does this, or I'll lean into him when he chooses to do this. It's costing you something. So like when you think about, and you get something out of it. So like it costs you something in having that, right? And then, but you got something out of it. So what do you think it cost you? What was the payoff for you?
Well, so the payoff originally was, if I just stay playing it safe, then we don't really have to embrace conflict. We don't really have to take accountability of our own actions. I knew how to ask for forgiveness and keep short accounts, but there was something missing on a deeper level. And that's, I think, where the emotional and spiritual intimacy was lacking, is that we weren't going down there. We weren't going to the next level. And so just playing it safe by really not going deeper.
So you were missing out on the depth of what was possible, and the connection that was available. And there's a saying that kind of has gone throughout our community from one of our ladies that says, choose your heart, right?
Yes.
And so we just talked about on another video about our marriage transformation seminar, and people avoid conflict often and we asked the group, we're like, okay, just neutrally, why do you avoid conflict? And they're like, oh, well, because it's going to create division, because it's going to be emotional, because it's going to be hard, because all these things. And we're like, literally by not addressing the conflict, do you see how you've already created all these things?
Right.
When you don't address it, right, this is what happens. So
That's
it's like
hard.
One is going to be hard. So not connecting, like when you wait for your husband to do it, like, what do you get out of that? Or what does it make you feel?
Then I feel like it's all his fault and the blame is on him. I don't have to take any responsibility or any accountability. I don't have to put myself out there and say I messed up.
Yeah.
I can truly look at him and his actions, and then I'm not accountable. So,
And that doesn't feel good.
right. I think at the core of it, I mean, that doesn't, I didn't find myself to be a very loving and patient and kind wife in that. I knew that I was not really leaning into a bigger connection there. But gosh, it was scary. It was scary because I didn't know what kind of a response I was going to get out of him.
I feel like in our relationship, we've had to battle through that because I used to get frustrated and get angry and explode. So Skylar came to me with something, I always took it personal. Right. And then I literally trained him. I would blow up and make it about me. And then he didn't want to talk about it anymore. He's like, I'm not even going to bring this stuff up. Right. And so I could have really stunted our connection together, but until I got aware of what was actually being triggered inside of me.
Right.
And so since then, we can choose our heart. I can choose disconnection, or I can choose to lean into the relationship. And I know you've talked about that often, like you choosing to lean in.
Right.
Do you have any
Yes, I have a great example. One time I just felt like Thomas was putting his business first and family and our marriage last, and I was just frustrated. And so I was gathering evidence throughout our day for how he was choosing to put everything else above me or everything else above the kids. And so I could have stayed there in that moment and just, been resentful and bitter that I wasn't getting back from him that attention and love that I thought I so deserved and desired. But instead, I think the seminar, Rise Up Queens, has just taught me to kind of what is the next layer underneath that. And I realized, I went a little deeper and I was like, okay, Lord, what is it? What is it about this scenario that is creating such a rise in me? And I finally went to Thomas and I could just say, hey, babe, I'm just vulnerably sharing and I need you to just hear what I'm saying and maybe don't solve it. Just if you could just listen to what I have to say, that would be super helpful. And I just shared that at the core of it, I was scared that I was going to end up like my mom. I was going to end up alone, spiritually, emotionally, physically alone. And so that was the tape that was running underneath my anxiety. And, he knows that story, but he looked at me and he said, you've never said it that way. You've never said it vulnerably that way. And so that moment for me helped me understand I need to come to him willing to kind of go there with my heart. And what is the story underneath that I'm telling myself? And what are the lies underneath it that I'm believing? Because that's what's running the tape.
And I love that you pointed to a really key tool that we love in our community, but taking it to the Lord. So if you've said, if only my husband would do this, then this. I challenge you to take that in prayer and in journaling to the Lord. What's that about? What's underneath that, right? Are you afraid that he's going to reject you? Are you afraid that you're going to get abandoned? Are you afraid that it's just not worth it or that it's too hard? What's underneath that statement? Because when you can start to go there, shifts can begin to happen. And so that's a tool that I often talk about because my ego's strong, right? So if I just try and process it out in my brain, I'm not going to get to the answer. But if I can just prayerfully and humbly walk in with the Lord and ask okay, God, I'm going to bring you in this equation and allow you be the Lord of my life and I'm not going to run it on my own, it creates dramatic shifts in your marriage. So I know you probably wanted to hear about how your husband's going to change, and we ended up talking about how you can shift, but I hope you got some good value out of this and some nuggets. I'd love to hear your takeaways below.